Once upon a time in America, decorating the walls of Chicago's Union Station with a little romance in stone might have been comparable to defacing a church. Back when we couldn't imagine having no time for trains, we glorified them with railway cathedrals from coast to coast.
America is a land of stations, high-roofed, mighty stations, with their intricate webs of girder, glass, and concrete, filled with 1,000,000 watts of yellow light, reflecting off the slick, bright covers of magazines on the newsstands, shining on the cold marble floors. Mighty stations with their ceaseless throbs, endless tides of humanity, guided by man-made timetables, ebbing and flowing forever, 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 forever.
When forever came sooner than expected, many of the grand old stations were written off as pretentious monuments to wasted space. Now, like the passenger trains that glide through them, they seem to be making a comeback. In the Northeast alone, a dozen of these architectural marvels have been restored to their former splendor, and another is almost ready. In mid-1988, workmen put the finishing touches on the second coming of Union Station more than 80 years after it was completed in the first place. At its prime, it was considered one of the finest railway terminals in the world. The government and private investors are betting close to $200 million that it will be even more than that the second time around, prospering also as a vast retail complex. It's a big gamble, but there are some precedents for commercial success refurbishing train stations. Railroad Authority, James Beislein.
The best example, I think, right now is St. Louis, which is beautiful. Now, that's a big operation. It's got a big hotel built in it so that it doesn't detract from the station. And the waiting rooms are the way they used to be, plus a plethora of restaurants and shops. I mean, there are a lot of shops. As far as I know, they're doing very well, because it's always jammed.
But not jammed with passengers. The developers figured no use ruining a perfectly good train station with trains, so they don't live here anymore.
But in Chicago, Washington, and other cities where Amtrak is involved in restoration, the classic stations continue to perform their traditional role for a new generation of travelers, people who are no longer taking the train just because it's the only way to get there.
People are getting really tired of the awful congestion on the highways. And airline travel, although it's essential, it gets you there, period, but there's no charm, there's no, as Amtrak would say in its ads, it's not the civilized way to go.
On Amtrak, it doesn't get any more civilized than this, the bi-level Superliner, the state-of-the-art in railroading. The older Capital Limited pales in comparison to the California Zephyr, one of the 3 surviving trains on the once crowded Glamour run to the West Coast.
For some reason on the Zephyr, this train hypnotizes you. It does. It's so beautiful, keeps you in a trance.
The Superliner may be the most comfortable mode of mass transportation in America for those who can afford the time and $300 a day for a double room. But this is no luxury hotel on wheels. The wide open spaces are all outside the window.
Amtrak calls this a deluxe bedroom, and there's no doubt that compared to probably any other train in America, these are the most luxurious accommodations available, and especially compared to spending 2.5 days sitting up in coach. At the same time, this room falls somewhere between what you might find on a cruise ship and what it would be like living in a pup tent for 2.5 days. As a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a little bit more like camping out than anything else. It gets real crowded in here. It's hard to even turn around, not to mention get dressed or undressed. And using the toilet is kind of an adventure unto itself. There are two buttons in there. One of them controls the flush toilet, and one of them controls the shower. Confusing those two buttons can be a very wet mistake.
A shower, inadvertent or not, is a luxury denied the folks in coach, along with any other frill, like a comfortable place to sleep. And yet, everyone we talk to had a higher opinion of Amtrak service than Amtrak, whose personnel often seem to be apologizing for not living up to those elusive good old days.
Well, I don't think I had any expectations of what the old days were like, having never been on a train before, and really the only thing I had to compare it to was airplane service, and it's 9 million times better than airplane service.
The service was really surprising. Everybody's really nice. They go out of their way to help you. The comfort is a little lacking, maybe trying to sleep in the coach seats, but they do whatever they can to make you happy. The food hasn't been as bad as what people said it was going to be. It's been a really nice time.
I know what I've enjoyed about it is the train tracks, they go through town, and we got on in Illinois, and each small town or even medium-sized town that you go through, you see all parts of the town, good and bad. So it's kind of a microcosm of not only that community, but kind of America at the same time. I thought that was kind of neat.
The people really make the trip. The people think the scenery is what it's all about. It is people meeting other people.
You do things you'd never do. We all sit in a car and play bingo together. I wouldn't do that on a bet. On the train, I would. No, it's fun. I like them. I like them a lot.
People who are basically shy will come out of their shell. And then you have people who just like to talk. You can't shut them up. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to direct your attention out the left-hand side of the train at this time. If you're looking out the left-hand side of the train, you'll be able to see a number of pink buildings with a beautiful asphalt parking lot, complete with guard tower. This happens to be one of Nevada's most famous social institutions, known as the Mustang Ranch.
Chief of Onboard Services, Bill Schaefer, was an insurance agent until 5 years ago, when he switched careers to realize his longtime dream of working on the railroad. Riding the Zephyr 6 days at a stretch, you'd think the scenery might become boring, the train routine. But not to a guy who says he almost got divorced on his honeymoon when his wife got fed up with riding the rails.
While I could sympathize with her a great deal because she'd never been on the train, she started running down certain things about the train and that, and I just had enough, and I told her, I said, enough is enough, and this has got to stop, or the conductor and I are going to throw you off whether the train stops or not. And I think she thought I was going to do it. And I'm pretty good-natured about just about everything, and I'll take a lot of criticism, but the railroad's very special.
Even without Bill Schaefer's encouragement, it's easy to get caught up in this romancing the rails bit. Especially when your train is racing across the wilderness, dodging in and out of 12 tunnels, and you remember that in truth, how the West was won was by building tracks across it. With a widescreen movie forever rolling outside the windows, it's easy to imagine this is still the wild, wild West.
Yeah, I do, you know, sort of imagining the cowboys and Indians and the train being attacked and what would happen. And